Hi, Alan Schimmel at DevOps.com at the DevOps Enterprise Summit, and we're here with Jez Humble, noted author, DevOps luminary, and just all around great guy. Jez, welcome.
Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you. So, Jez, you presented here, or you are presenting, and you've been on a few panels. For our viewers who may not have been able to attend, can you give them a little background about what you were presenting on?
Sure, so I have a talk about architecture and the importance of architecture for achieving some of the goals of DevOps and continuous delivery, how you change and evolve your architecture over time, and I presented a panel on DevOps and continuous delivery if you're working in embedded. So everyone thinks continuous delivery, DevOps, that's for websites. We're like, no, absolutely not. We had a guy from GM, someone from Qualcomm, Gary Gruber, who used to work on HP LaserJet firmware, talking about how these practices are really important in many domains, not just websites.
Yep. And then you are speaking beyond that, or that covers them both?
That's my lot.
That's it. So, Jez, beyond your speaking participation in the event, I mean, you are a key contributor to Gene's team in organizing the event, picking speakers, etc. Give our viewers a little behind the scenes, if you can, of what goes into this.
Yeah, I mean, this year I didn't actually contribute very much, although I was on the panel. This year has been ridiculous for me. But I worked with Gene on these things before, and I think it's very difficult putting a conference like this together. I mean, as you know, you do this as well, and I think you got to start from first principles and what you're trying to do. And I know that there's a big effort on trying to find companies who've really done this stuff in real life. You're looking for people who've really done this. They have the experience reports, so that people looking can say, okay, it's not just talking heads. There's real people who've done this, and we want stories from a wide variety of domains. So not just the classic websites. We want people from insurance and healthcare and all this kind of thing to show that this works across these different domains. Hence the embedded panel. And then the other thing also that is important is diversity. We know we operate in an industry where there's lots of white dudes, and that's an indication that there's something very wrong. And so I know that's important to the committee to try and represent the diversity that we would like to see in the industry, and make sure we do a good job there. And obviously everyone has to be very high quality. We want high quality speakers, not necessarily polished speakers, and I know they've helped people iterate through their slides, but we want people who people can learn from, who've got real life experience.
Absolutely. Jez, when did you write Continuous Delivery? Was it 2009, 10?
It came out in 2010. It took 4 years to write it, so I was writing it from 2006 to 2010.
And so, could you have imagined in 2010 writing on Continuous Delivery and this whole kind of, I don't even know if we called it DevOps, actually by 2010, yeah, but that whole pattern, if you will, having an enterprise summit like this where you have the biggest names in the world talking about how they're adopting these patterns.
Yeah, I did not plan it this way. It's very unexpected, very nice. Yeah. As I've said before, Dave and I set out to write a book on what at the time was a kind of dusty and quite boring corner of software, which is the build, test automation, deployment automation, which was seen as very secondary in the enterprise of delivering software. And so we were just very lucky, I think, that 2009 really the whole DevOps wave kicked off. You've got Velocity, Paul Hammond and John Osborne's presentation, and then the DevOps name, Patrick Dubois and Andrew Schaefer kicking off the whole DevOps side of things. And so we just were very lucky that the book came out at a time when that particular wave crested, and it's continued to crest. In retrospect, it's easy to see why. It's because it actually works. So that we've had in our industry for a long time this idea that by going faster you break things, that when you're looking at cost and scope and schedule and quality, these are trade-offs. And I think what DevOps and continuous delivery are about is, well, no, there's actually not a trade-off. If you change your whole system and your way of thinking about building software, you can achieve higher quality and higher speed at lower cost. And actually, by changing the system, we can break through that whole trade-off. And this is what Lean achieved in manufacturing. In manufacturing, I mean, I I teach a course at UC Berkeley. I had my students listen to the NUMMI podcast on This American Life, and they talk about how when they built the NUMMI plant, they had the same workers building much higher quality cars, much faster at lower cost. And it changed the whole paradigm, and that's what we're doing here. So the fact that we're all here represents the fact that this really works.
Yep. So I guess the next logical question, though, Jez, is what's next? How do you top this?
So I have a slightly cynical answer to that, which is that I think it'll be a long time before we see these practices really be business as usual. A lot of the management practices we talk about in Lean and continuous delivery and DevOps are not new. They've been talked about for decades. People like Deming have talked about them. There's McGregor's book, The Human Side of Enterprise, which talks about Theory X and Theory Y styles of management, which was written in the 60s. I was presenting to my students Deming's 14 points for management, and those are still provocative and controversial, I think, even today. So I'm skeptical that, well, two things. Firstly, that this is actually going to be adopted very quickly. And secondly, that a lot of what we're talking about is actually new in many ways. What we've done is, I think, create a movement around some ideas that aren't very new, but the application of them is new. And my concern is you've got people coming out of college every year going into the industry. How are we going to make sure that they are doing the right thing, and that when they go into industry, they don't immediately become indoctrinated to do the wrong thing? That's a decades-long change that has been going on before DevOps existed, and will probably be going on after DevOps is dead.
I agree. Oftentimes everyone's always looking for the next new shiny toy or trinket, and we don't realize that just because the leading edge is adopted doesn't mean the following edge is caught up. But anyway, Jez, in a lot of ways, this doesn't happen without you and your contribution, so thank you.
Thanks very much.
And thanks for appearing here today.
That's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Okay. Alan Schimmel, DevOps.com with Jez Humble.